Welcome to Something Political, an auxiliary publication of the bi-weekly CCU TV broadcast. In this episode, I will be addressing the controversial topic of Kim Davis and her refusal to issue marriage licenses in Rowan County, Kentucky. I will cover the timeline of her case and offer a commentary on the law of the land, separation of powers, and justice. Stay tuned. Something Political starts now. The great Martin Luther King once said, "An individual who breaks the law that conscience tells him is unjust and who willingly accepts the penalty of imprisonment in order to arouse the conscience of the community over its injustice is in reality expressing the highest respect for the law." The question posed today is Kim Davis right in refusing to sign marriage licenses? My answer, it depends. I believe she is right in refusing to sign on grounds of religious conscience, but is wrong in refusing to sign licenses altogether, because at the end of the day, it is her job. We will see how this is true by exploring three different concepts. First, what is the law of the land? Second, why separation of powers is important? And third, what does justice look like when rights and duties conflict? But before we jump into these topics, it's important to cover some background information. Who is Kim Davis? Kim Davis is a resident of Rowan County, Kentucky, who is an elected Democrat to the position of county clerk. As clerk, she is responsible for managing county records, such as marriage licenses, divorce, arrest, criminal and court records. She worked as a deputy clerk in Rowan County for over 25 years before defeating Republican Jim Cox in the 2014 election for the head clerk position. During her tenure, Kim has had 3 divorces. However, in 2011, she underwent a religious awakening after her mother-in-law's dying wish was that she attend church. Davis attends Solid Rock Apostolic Church, which is associated with the Oneness Pentecostal denomination. She has not been divorced since her reawakening and acknowledged that a lot of things she did in the past were wicked. As a new Christian of 4 years, Kim is focused on outward holiness by dressing modestly and doing good works, such as hosting a female Bible study at the local jail. The second piece of background information we need to cover is what happened. In January, the Supreme Court accepted numerous cases on gay marriage legalization. Anticipating an affirmative decision, Kim Davis petitioned Kentucky Governor Steve Beshear for religious exemption. Beshear ignored her request. On June 26th, the Supreme Court handed down the ruling in Obergefell v. Hodges, which extended protections of the 14th Amendment to gay couples seeking marriage. 3 days later, Kim Davis, along with 4 other county clerks, refused to issue marriage licenses. They collectively stated that if they must sign same-sex licenses, in an effort of fairness, they would not sign any because gay marriage violated their deeply held religious beliefs. On July 2nd, the ACLU sued Kim Davis and Rowan County. Pleas for an emergency legislative session to amend marriage license certificates was denied. Kim Davis pleads that she not be required to put her personal signature on a same-sex license. Her case goes before U.S. District Judge David Bunning on August 12th, who says Davis must sign the licenses regardless of her beliefs. The ruling is appealed to the 6th U.S. Circuit and then to the Supreme Court. Both affirm that Davis must sign the licenses. On September 3rd, Davis is found in contempt of court and jailed. Nearly a week later, she was released by a judge order with the condition that she not interfere with her deputy clerk's efforts to sign same-sex marriage licenses. Since being released, gay marriage licenses have been issued in Rowan County, but without Davis's signature. So what does she actually want? On September 1st, Kim issued the following statement. "I never imagined a day like this would come, where I would be asked to violate a central teaching of Scripture and of Jesus himself regarding marriage. To issue a marriage license which conflict with God's definition of marriage with my name affixed to the certificate, would violate my conscience. It is not a light issue for me. It is a heaven or hell decision. For me, it is a decision of obedience. Contrary to popular belief, the Kim Davis case is less about denying licenses as much as it is about a personal signature. Kim Davis believes it has eternal consequences and does not want to have her personal signature of approval, currently required by Kentucky law, on a same-sex marriage license. So in an effort of fairness, she refused to sign any marriage licenses in June and has referred gay and straight couples to other county clerks who will sign them. It's important to note that Kim Davis is not the first one to do this. Amongst her fellow Kentucky clerks in Clinton, Montgomery, Lawrence, and Casey County, Davis is also joined by a Dallas judge, Tanya Parker, who is a lesbian and since 2012 has refused to perform marriage ceremonies because she cannot perform them for gay couples. Furthermore, in 2004, San Francisco Mayor Gavin Newman illegally issued gay marriage licenses at a time when California state law prohibited such. He was hailed as a hero by many news outlets. Today, those same outlets have condemned Kim Davis. Davis has continued to receive criticism for her actions. The Human Rights Campaign said Miss Davis has the fundamental right to believe what she likes, but as a public servant, she does not have the right to pick and choose which laws she will follow or which services she will provide. The Kentucky Attorney General's office said, "I understand that passions are high on both sides of the issue, but we are a nation of laws, and no one can defy an order from a federal judge." On the other side, Kim Davis has received support from Republican presidential candidates Ted Cruz, Bobby Jindal, and Rand Paul. Mike Huckabee even threw a rally for her upon her release from jail. But the most common criticism from people on the left and the right is summarized by the following statement: gay marriage is the law of the land. She has to obey it. Which brings us to point one. What is the law of the land? The most common understanding is simply whatever the Supreme Court says, but truth is it's a little more complicated than that. The main reason the Supreme Court was split on a 5-4 decision was over whether or not the Constitution actually gives the federal government power to define marriage. Scalia, Roberts, Thomas, and Alito all argued that marriage is a state issue and should be left for the people to decide. Anthony Kennedy, writing the majority of opinion, said the 14th Amendment protects same-sex marriages. This decision was a radical change from the previous law of the land. From 1998 to 2008, 33 different states, including the likes of California and Wisconsin, voted to ban gay marriage through ballot measures or constitutional amendments. In the state of Kentucky, the Constitution was amended to define marriage as one man and one woman. There is also an argument propagated by conservative historians that the phrase laws of nature and nature's God in the Declaration affirms marriage as one man and one woman. All this to say, the law of the land is more nuanced than a 5-4 court decision. Even on the federal level, there has been no congressional legislation affirming the Supreme Court's decision. It is important to put this controversy in the perspective of history, where we see that the law of the land is constantly changing. Take, for example, Abraham Lincoln's response to the 1857 Dred Scott case, which declared as settled law that black slaves weren't fully human. They were property. Did Lincoln accept that? No. He said on the coincidental date of June 26, 1857, in a speech at Springfield, Illinois, that the decision was erroneous and biased, being decided by a split court along party lines. Lincoln then went on to write the Emancipation Proclamation and then inspired the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution, which abolished slavery and gave blacks the right to vote. All of this effectively overruled what had been the law of the land a few years earlier. To summarize, we understand the law of the land to be a combination of the powers and rights enumerated in the Declaration and the Constitution, interpreted by the Supreme Court, legislated by Congress, and enforced by the executive, with powers not enumerated to the federal government being reserved to the states and the people. This brings us to point two, separation of powers. On September 12, 1820, Thomas Jefferson wrote the following in a letter to Charles Jarvis: "You seem to consider the judges as the ultimate arbiters of all constitutional questions, a very dangerous doctrine indeed, and one which would place us under the despotism of an oligarchy. Our judges are as honest as other men, and not more so. They have with others the same passions for party, for power, and the privilege of their corpse." In this letter, Jefferson rebuked Jarvis's new book, which spoke of judicial power as the determining factor in what is or isn't the law of the land. Jefferson pointed out that the judiciary is not the end-all be-all. 5 of 9 lawyers do not get to determine the law of the land by themselves. Their power is subject to the checks and balances of 2 other branches. Just as Andrew Jackson disobeyed the Cherokee Nation decision and went through with Congress's Indian Removal Act, so too did Abraham Lincoln disobey the law of the land with the Emancipation Proclamation. The court rendered their interpretation. Congress and the executive disagreed. The separation of powers principle is important because it brings into context the complexity of this issue and explains why Chief Justice John Roberts dissented with the following. Today's decision, for example, creates serious questions about religious liberty. Many good and decent people oppose same-sex marriage, and as a tenet of faith and their freedom to exercise religion is, unlike the right imagined by the majority, actually spelled out in the Constitution. Justice Alito added his 2 cents, saying, "Today's decision usurps the constitutional right of the people to decide whether to keep or alter the traditional understanding of marriage. The decision will also have other important consequences. It will be used to vilify Americans who are unwilling to assent to the new orthodoxy." It seems Alito's dissent was prophetic, bringing us to point 3. When rights and duties conflict, what is just? Kim Davis's case is more nuanced than the traditional cake baker refusing to make a gay wedding cake, because Kim is an elected official. As an elected official, she cannot be fired before her term is up. To be removed, she must be impeached by the state legislature. Columbia Law School professor Catherine Davis said, "Kim Davis has all sorts of religious liberty rights secured under the First Amendment and under no other laws, but they are not at stake in this case. All she's asked to do with couples that come before her is certify that they've met the state requirements for marriage. So her religious opposition to same-sex marriage is absolutely irrelevant in this context." Is she right? Martin Luther King and Abraham Lincoln certainly disagreed, as does Kim Davis. So here's what this conflict boils down to. As a state official, Kim Davis is required to obey an unjust law? The law is in violation of God's natural law. There's no doubt about that. Aquinas and others argue that natural law supersedes human law. However, the matter becomes muddled because the government has become involved in the institution of marriage. 2 facts are important here. 1, a majority of the states, voted to ban same-sex marriage. 2, the Supreme Court Justices Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Sonia Sotomayor violated the Judicial Code of Ethics by revealing their stance before the case was actually heard. They both officiated same-sex weddings before issuing favorable votes. The removal of these unethical votes would have resulted in a 4-3 decision against same-sex marriage. The justice of the Supreme Court decision is debatable on numerous grounds, but the ruling still stands. Thus, as an employee of the government, Kim Davis is required to uphold the law and issue licenses. Regardless of political party or religious conviction, I believe Ryan Anderson, writing for the New York Times, summarizes this issue clearly when he says, "Some on the left say that you must do every aspect of your job despite your beliefs, or resign. But this has never been the practice in the United States. We have a rich history of accommodating the conscientious objections in a variety of settings, including government employees. For example, the Fort Hood shooter, Nidal Hasan, a major in the Army, was allowed to keep his beard in violation of Army regulations for religious reasons. In June, the North Carolina legislature actually passed legislation accommodating the clerks, saying that by notifying a superior of their objection to gay marriage ahead of time, the clerks could protect their rights of conscience while ensuring no couple was inconvenienced. We've also seen this kind of accommodation extended to the Amish, who pay a tax instead of serving in the military. And numerous universities across the country have been exempted from the law of the land known as Obamacare for religious reasons. So when rights and duty conflict, what is just? We have always been a nation of tolerance and equality. Kim Davis can respect the same-sex marriage by permitting other clerks to sign the certificate, and gay couples can respect Kim Davis's religious beliefs by not forcing her to sign a certificate that violates her conscience. The gays get to marry, and Kim keeps her conscience. Everybody wins. So in conclusion, there is no doubt that the battle between religious liberty and same-sex marriage will continue. Whether Kim Davis will be on the right side of history, only time will tell. What we do know for certain is that a nation valuing tolerance and equality can find a solution and accommodate all peoples. This has been Something Political by Jared Cummings. Thanks for watching.